Yo, what's up? We are now at Korgfjellet, sitting in an ID bus, and now I'm going to drive to Mosjøen. So yes, we haven't had this video in a while now, so I figured, yeah, why not? Let's do it now. So it's the, I don't know, rambling. No, I would call it the TED Talk video. Yes. So today's topic is going to be about those sites, those maybe outdated charging sites. How about that? I don't know what to call it, but the idea to this video came up when I was driving in this stretch. We are kind of far north now, but actually not that far north. And on the way here, you will pass by many of these charging sites that has 2 times 50 kilowatt fast chargers, and then 2 times 22 kilowatt AC. And the charging corridor has been made, well, a while ago. Well, actually, when was it made? I think it was, let's say, 5-6 years ago, which is actually not that long. But already now, I feel like those sites are outdated. So let me explain why. Because 50 kilowatt has some limitations. Okay, it's labeled as 50 kilowatt, but you don't always, what you see is not what you get. That's the problem. So the problem is that those plugs that they use, that's a CCS1 plug and Chalamo, they are limited to 125 amps. And then EVs, typically, they will have voltage that ranges from 350 to 400 volt, typically. And then for EVs, they can take maximum speed when they have low use. Normally, that's the normal conditions, which means that you arrive there with 350 volt, which the charging voltage will be maybe higher, 360 something, and then you charge at maximum 125 amp, and you don't get 50 kilowatt, you get 42, 45 kilowatt, and then eventually you will get 50 kilowatt, maybe, depending on what car it is. So, which means that you're actually not utilizing the 50 kilowatt most of the time. You might be utilizing, I don't know, on average, maybe only 45 kilowatt. And then what about the type 2? Yeah, well, 2 times 22 kilowatt type 2 is also there, but then which cars can take it? Because we have seen the trend nowadays that, well, let's say for 4 or 5 years ago, most EVs, they had 7.4 kilowatt onboard charger, but now it's more common to have at least 11 kilowatt onboard charger, but that's still not 22 kilowatt. So why do we have 22 kilowatt over there? Well, I guess some Zoes might be able to utilize it, maybe some classic Teslas with dual chargers, and some Renault Megane, the new one. But then what about Fat e-tron? It's supposed to have 22 kilowatt, and then Taycan. Well, I actually wonder, where did they go? Because on spec, yes, they're supposed to have it, but I've never seen a Fat e-tron charge on 22 kilowatt, and then, you know, posting about it. So I think they kind of, okay, it's supposed to be there, but they never implemented it. They never delivered those 22 kilowatt onboard chargers. So what I'm saying is that not many cars can take 22 kilowatt. And okay, there are many Zoes out there that can take 22 kilowatt, but in Norway, I travel a lot in Norway, the Zoes are not being used for long trips. They are used mostly for local runs, which means that those 22 kilowatts, they are kind of waste of power, because you know that 50 kilowatt plus 22 kilowatt, that's roughly 150 kilowatt power that needs to be reserved on that site. And also I remember when I talked to the charge point operators about this, they also need to consider available power, and if available power is not enough, then they need to maybe stretch some high voltage cables, or invest in a bigger converter, transformer and stuff. So, and then also you have the peak power. So actually the problem is that the available power might not be enough, but whatever you have there should be utilized better. So I just remember peak power could actually be a problem. I'll come back to that if I remember it. But you see, this is the problem, because we are in no man's land. Yeah, let me talk about peak power. The problem also in no man's land is that not many people use those chargers. And you can see, maybe you get a better understanding while I'm driving here that the population density is low, the traffic density is low, and also naturally very few people use those chargers. And remember that Fortum, Grønn Kontakt, or now Recharge, Mer, or those charge point operators, they invested money back in the days to install those chargers. It was a high investment cost. You think it's just a charger? No, you have to stretch some cables, dig some stuff in the ground, create some concrete foundation, put a shed, and also the app, the support, the 24/7 support. But at least the investment cost is there, and then you have to sell the fast charging sessions and try to make the money back while still maintaining some, I don't know if there's some running cost there, probably. So obviously if you invest something like that in the middle of Oslo, you will have lots of people using them. But if you invest in there over here, very few people will use it, and then it will take a long time for the company to get the money back and start making money on those chargers. But however, many of those stretches, they have been supported by Enova. The Enova is a governmental company thing that they do lots of support, or they have some subsidies they dish out to companies that do something for the environment. And also back in the days, Enova would have some kind of requirement for what is needed, or what, like they will have a stretch, right, Østerdal or in the north here, and then some companies can get support if they meet the requirements set by Enova. And from my understanding, back then, many years ago, they required 2 times 50 kilowatt, which makes sense when you have i3s and Leafs, and 22 kilowatt AC, 2 of them also. That one, I don't know why, because back then those cars couldn't really take that kind of charging speed, except for Zoe's and then Tesla Model S. But it turns out that by the end of the day, not many cars use those chargers. I've seen sites, actually, yeah, like in Mo i Rana, Circle K, the one that I eat pizza every time I'm going to Mo i Rana. That one used to have 2 times 22 kilowatt AC and then 1 times 50 kilowatt DC. And then they replaced the 2 AC with 1 DC instead. So 22 times 44-ish kilowatt, that became 50, yeah. And I've seen other sites also where they take away the AC and then replace them with DC, because they figured out that the space and the power available there is better utilized. So which brings me back to, well, why stop there, right? Why don't we go for something faster? Because if we have 150 kilowatt available on that site, why don't put a Delta charger, 150 kilowatt Delta with 2 plugs? Then you get 75 kilowatt each, or if you're alone, which is most likely, then you get 150 kilowatt. So a fat e-tron will be getting close to 150 kilowatt there, rather than sucking on 50 kilowatt only. And that means that you will then minimize the probability of laderstau. And during summer, those 50 kilowatt sites are just being gangbang. And the problem is that nowadays cars, they have so big batteries that they need to charge for at least an hour, or sometimes almost 2 hours, and maybe they just go to the restaurant and they stay there for 2 hours. But meanwhile, remember that those sites, they also have AC, but those AC powers are not being utilized. So you could have chewed away the queue better if we had better power distribution on the chargers. That's basically what I'm saying. But why don't the companies do it? Like over here we have some Recharge, some Mer. Well, I guess it brings down to cost versus utilization. So Mer, I'm guessing, I haven't talked to them about this, but I'm guessing that they don't want to take that reinvestment to upgrade, because they have already taken an investment long time ago, and who knows if they even got the money back yet. And then they're going to reinvest again after 5-6 years to put up just taking away those 50 kilowatt chargers and the 22 kilowatt and then installing a Delta charger. that one already cost money for the labor and the reinstallation, and then the charger itself. And then what the heck do they do with the 50 kilowatts? Because nowadays you see that they don't really install that many 50 kilowatt. They tend to go for high power chargers. So you then have hardware just laying around, not being used. So, you know, it's like the chicken or the egg. What do you do? Because as for me, I'm driving the ID bus, and yeah, I'm driving now over to Mosjøen. Mosjøen is a city, so at least over there it kind of pays off to have high power chargers. Same with Mo i Rana, which is further north. Those sites, for example, Mo i Rana Recharge, they also removed some 50 kilowatt recently and installed a bunch of Kempower chargers at Esso. So suddenly you have high power charge over there, nice, but it pays off because in Mo i Rana I see more and more EVs. So you will have local people charging there, but also for holiday or weekends even, there will be other people driving by there, going to the destination cabin, and they will also need to high power charge there. So putting up a high power charger site on in a city will give you higher utilization and shorter payback time, or what they call it, return on investment. Yeah, but installing a high power charger in no man's land like Majavatn or Harran will most likely not pay back in a very, very long time. But the problem is that for me as a user, as a consumer, I will then look at the charging map and then I see, oh, that's 50 kilowatt. No, that's not going to cut it. This ID bus can take 189 kilowatts, you know. So I want Ioniq or V3 supercharger, or at least 150 kilowatt fast charger. So for me, I will leap between the high power chargers and I will not visit the 50 kilowatt chargers. So you see, it means that if Mer or the other companies, they retrofit those 50 kilowatt sites with high power charger, the probability that a fat e-tron or a Tesla, or well, maybe not, yeah, maybe not Tesla, but at least fat e-tron or some other non-Teslas will visit that site because it has 150 kilowatt now, you know, that probability is going to be higher. So it's like a bad spiral. They keep the 50 kilowatt, nobody uses them, it's too slow, and that's just how it is. And then it's such a shame because we have a nice, beautiful landscape here, long stretches, long distances, and lots of EVs. And Norway needs more fast chargers. I've seen it during holiday seasons. There will be, sometimes you might have to queue up for like an hour at the 50 kilowatt site, and there'll be two fat e-trons slurping in juice. Nobody uses the AC, or maybe someone uses the AC, but they can only utilize 7.4 kilowatt from it, you know, and that's just how the story goes. So yeah, I actually don't have the solution. I just present you guys the problem, but also I have to say, 50 kilowatt chargers, I mean, are they useless? Today I feel like they are a little bit outdated. They should at least be the 75 kilowatt, like the RTM, the tritium 75 kilowatt, because those chargers, I believe that they have higher amp limit on the plug. It should be 200 amp, and then you should be getting more. I think the chance of getting 75 kilowatt on those chargers are higher than getting 50 kilowatt on a 50 kilowatt charger. You need to have a car. Some cars like the ID3 has actually high enough voltage so you can get 49 kilowatt even at low state of charge, but most cars, they can't utilize it, as I mentioned earlier. But yeah, from a user's perspective, for me, I would like to see only high power chargers. Like, I don't want to see the 50 kilowatt chargers because they are simply too slow. We just need enough of those. You can say, well, but there are still old cars out there. Bjørn, get off your high horse, you know. No, but yes, old cars, yes, they can only utilize 50 kilowatt, but they can also use high power chargers. As long as we have enough stalls, then no problem. Like Kempower, you know, put up enough stalls, have some smart power distribution, and then a Taycan that needs lots of power will get the power, and then a Leaf or an i3 can just sip on some 45 kilowatts. Yeah. But yeah, so the problem is, how do you solve this? And also, what about new installations? I think for existing installations, I don't have the solution. one solution actually, yeah, I just remember, would actually be for Innova to consider another round of, there'll be like an upgrade round, but it will only be directed directly to the companies that initially install that site. So normally when they have this, they call it, what do you call it again? Yeah, they announce openly which companies will do it, and then someone will take the job, right? But now this is more like a closed upgrade, since we already have the companies there, and we don't want to change which company wants to run the site. So I tried to remember what it was called. But yeah, so anyway, what they can do is that Innova can actually offer these companies subsidy to upgrade existing sites. That's actually the only way for the existing site to be better. Yeah. Otherwise, I think that the charge point operators will not upgrade the sites, and from the user's perspective, it will be a better experience to upgrade the sites. But also, when it comes to new sites, at least I haven't seen it that now, at least fortunately, at least in Norway, I see that new sites they get high power chargers, or at least they get some delta chargers. So that is actually the way to go. Just like Tesla, you know, they don't install V3 superchargers anymore. The new sites, they will always come up with they don't install V2 anymore. Sorry, V2 is like, you know, outdated for Tesla. They only install V3, which is faster and more future-proof. The problem, in my opinion, is that the 50 kilowatt chargers, they are not future-proof. But I can understand from a cost perspective that 50 kilowatt chargers, when you want to just install it, maybe in some other countries, they install it at Lidl or somewhere, right? It's not too expensive. It doesn't require too much power, and it will still provide okay power for some cars, and it's still faster than some AC charging point, at least. Yeah. But in that regard, yes, it kind of makes sense. But if you install two 50 kilowatt chargers, then it starts to not make sense, especially if the site also has some AC, because then you already need to invest in space and time and money, and labor to install two 50 kilowatt, and that means that you already have 150 kilowatt on that site, and you have to invest more chargers. In my opinion, installing two chargers like that is actually a bad idea today. They should instead go for some kind of power sharing, like a hypercharger with two plugs, or a delta charger, or, well, Kempower is slightly more complicated, since you then have to dig underground. You have the dispenser, whatever. But you can actually also buy. Kempower also has a standalone product that is just like the other ones. You just have the charging box, everything in there, but you can also then upgrade the power modules there. But you can also do that with, Delta doesn't allow the flexibility, but at least Hypercharger from Alpetronic, you also have the possibility to upgrade power units as you get more traffic there. That is the best, in my opinion, that is the way to go. Yeah, because then that site becomes more future-proof. Because if you look today, there are a few sites with Delta 150 kilowatt chargers and then shared between, so they're 2 times 75 or 1 times 150. Even today, that site is good for many cars. Like a Tesla, a fat e-tron, this ID bus would be happy to receive 145 kilowatt. That is roughly max for that one, for this car. That was plenty. So it means that, in a way, the 50 kilowatt chargers, they are kind of outdated. You know, they worked great until maybe 2000 and, I don't know, 18, or let's say, okay, until 2020 roughly. Then most cars, they kind of need more power. But at least the 150 kilowatt Delta chargers, or Alpetronic or Kempower, they will still work, I claim, until at least 2030, maybe even longer. Because in general, cars, they they will use this a certain amount of energy. They are not the energy consumption in EVs will not go up significantly. Maybe eventually they will make like freaking G-Wagon, thirsty G-Wagon, but most EVs they make today, they will actually try to make them efficient. And the battery sizes, okay, might be bigger, true, but, and then you say, yeah, but then it will take longer to fill it up. Yes, but cars nowadays, they don't utilize 150 kilowatt for too long, except for maybe fat e-tron. So you will only peak at 150 kilowatt until, let's say, 20 to 40%, depending on battery size. So actually, in the future, when you have bigger batteries or better battery tech, you can then ride on the 150 kilowatt wave for longer. Maybe you can charge 150 kilowatt until 80%, just like an i3 can charge on 48 kilowatt until 80% nowadays, right? So what I'm saying is that those 150 kilowatt sites will be way more future-proof, and they can last until at least 2030, maybe even longer, because my claim is that cars, they will just need a certain amount of energy, and when you have 150 kilowatt, you already have pretty good speed to fulfill people's need. And then you can say, okay, but what about 350 kilowatt or 1 megawatt? You want to refill within 5 minutes. Okay, this is a different topic I'm touching into. Yeah, true, but again, I also have some claims based on real world experience that, in my opinion, recharging within 5 minutes might not be necessary due to the nature of EVs, that you can, in many cases, charge at home. It's becoming more and more common now. There are more and more laws in Norway even. There are laws that gives you the right to install a charging station at a parking lot if you live in a high-rise building, and more countries will come with that. So the probability of having AC charging where you either work or live is higher, which means that the need to refill the battery locally is lower, and that means you only need to refill the battery when you are in some kind of unforeseen situation locally, or when you are on a road trip. And like we are now on a road trip, then the situation is different, because then I will usually start with full battery or high battery, and then by the time I need to stop for a filling, by the time the battery is low, then I also need to pee and eat, you know? And also, not many people hammer 1,000 kilometers per day. So when you are on a road trip, you might just drive 500 kilometers per day, depending on where, especially in Norway. Yeah. So in Norway, you can actually drive a typical day trip on a vacation with family and kids, dogs, whatever. You can almost do that the whole day stretch without recharging, or you just need to top up one time. And then typically when you need to stop for food, the car will be ready at 90% or 100% before you have finished eating. So what I'm saying is that 150 kilowatt is actually future-proof. Yeah, I don't know if it makes sense, but okay, some sites maybe you can have some mega charger for some people who just need to fill it up within 5 minutes. But for most people, as long as you have enough charging points, then even roughly 150 to 250 kilowatt is sufficient. So yeah, I touch into many different topics. I'm not sure if this makes any sense and if it will make life better for EV drivers or not. I'm just telling you how it is, and then maybe someone gets some good idea about. Yeah, I just remember now. It's called tender. Tender is the utlysning to announce for charging network, whatever. Yeah, yeah. Like I said, you know, Enova, when they announce this tender, they can then get companies to build charging network. But I feel like, okay, the charging network has been built, but you kind of need to follow up, because times are changing. EVs are getting better and better, and we need to update that charging network. For example, Tesla has done it. You know, back in the old days, Tesla was only 90 kilowatt in the early days in US, and then they introduced the 120 and the 135 kilowatt superchargers. And now they also, but Tesla's system is more future-proof already from the start, because 2 and 2 stalls were sharing juice, and that actually makes sense. when you have a Laderstau situation, because then you will be you're able to output more power and then get rid of the queue. But then the Tesla also managed to upgrade to 150 kilowatt, at least for the V2, and also the stalls, they managed to switch out the Type 2 only for Type 2 and CCS. So now my ID bus, or not mine, but yeah, it's a press car. But then the ID bus here can also go over to the V2 supercharger and charge there and get almost 150 kilowatts. But also then they implemented V3, but they can then upgrade parts of the hardware, but they already kind of did the groundwork of installing the charger and dug on the ground. So all sites, they didn't have to do too much. They just changed the power modules, which is the boxes you see to the right, and then the stalls, the dispenser to the left, and then the car is pretty much future-proof. And this site here, for example, 150 kilowatt, my claim is that it will still work great even in 2030. Okay, 250 kilowatt would be nice, but yeah, it's not that much needed. But then when it comes to the other sites, the 50 kilowatt sites, they didn't really think that forward. They build the chargers, the ABB FSEC, and it's not really future-proof, not expandable, not upgradable. Whereas Kempower is upgradable and expandable. Alpitronic is also expandable, upgradable, but you just have to make sure to get the fat cabinet. If you get the thin cabinet, then you only have 1 or 2 power modules available. You might as well go for the fat cabinet with 4 power modules available, then you only put in 1 or 2 in the beginning, and then you can upgrade. So yeah, so now I'm just gonna plug in here and get some juice, probably Colgate. Yeah, that's also another thing. I will wait, maybe I should plug in by the end of the stall, so I don't no, whatever, it doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter where I plug in, but maybe I'll just do it like this to be a good panda. Plug in by the end of the stall here, so I'm not disturbing if anyone else would come here. Yeah. But anyway, so yes, I think that's gonna be it for now. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, thank you for watching, and talk to you later.